This particular episode of our podcast is very close to my heart, and you will get the answers when you listen it. In this podcast, we are talking to architect Tushar Kothawade and ID Chiranjivi Lunkad from Studio Infinity.
Hello, sir, and hello, ma'am. Welcome to Art Saga Dialogue. And I'm excited today for two reasons. One is because this is my first interview where I'm hosting two designers. And second, very few people know that sir was my visiting faculty for architecture design in my college for first year.
Yes.
And
Thank you, Sagar, for inviting us.
Yes, absolutely. I think even both of us are excited for this session.
so there is a bit of a bitter memory for me as well with sir. That sir gave me my first ever redo.
Okay.
So,
So I think here you can take a revenge and give him retakes again and again.
let's see how it goes. So I will start the interview with my first segment, which is PSD, philosophy, story, and design. So my first question to both of you is your architecture experience as a student and as a practicing architect.
Okay. So architecture, while we were studying architecture, it was that transition from being a school student into a professional field. So that transition was smooth in a way, but it was also where we were lost. And this I can say for both of us that while we were studying, we knew that we were pursuing design as a careers, but still there was no particular direction in which we were moving ahead. We were just going with the flow. So of course we enjoyed our college life thoroughly to the fullest. So having night overs and long submission times and all of that was exciting, but still there was no particular direction to what we were doing. So, and somebody had said that after 5 years of learning architecture, you have to spend 5 years unlearning it, and
Yes.
then your actual journey into architecture begins. So we took that very seriously, and both of us worked for more than 5 years in a firm, and that is how actually the studying then got stretched from 5 years to 10 years, and then we were actually capable of probably starting with our own studio. So this is how our journey began.
So I agree. I think during our college days, we were just engrossed into our everyday submissions and all. I don't recall myself, thinking much about how I would pursue further into my career, or whether I would really take the profession that seriously. But I think a great part of learning happened when we actually started working. So when we did our internship, and like 5 years is a long time. Like these days, kids stick around for 1 or 2 years. So 5 years for us was a long time, and I think there we actually started taking the profession seriously, or we got the hang of it, that okay, yeah, how are we going to pursue, or how do we see ourselves further into design.
Those were the exact lines which sir said to us also in the first year, that you learn 5 years of architecture and then you have to unlearn it. I still remember that. I would like to ask again, like, what is the story of Studio Infinity and your design philosophy?
Uh, the story of Studio Infinity, we are still trying to search it. But yes, what we always wanted to do is create our own niche for ourselves. So since both of us are partners in the office and at home, so there is no end to our design thinking. So it just carries. So when we are driving back to the office or back to home, the design thinking is always there. So our dreams, our aspirations were always to create some kind of a niche space for ourselves in the city that we are practicing, and probably just not be another practice who is doing work that comes to our platter, but try and do justice to what we get. And this is where this is the story of Studio Infinity. In fact, of course, like everybody else, we started with one single bedroom. We started by designing a friend's uh, a living room, our relatives' kitchens, and all of that. So that story, which applies to everybody else in design, has been our story also. The only big thing for us has been the enormous kind of effort that we've put in terms of man hours, working in the studio, working for what we actually wanted to achieve. So it starts from there. And philosophy of practice, I think this has been evolving. So we of course started with one particular line of thought, and then slowly as we did more projects, the scale changed, the variety of work that we were doing changed, even our thought process kept on changing. But yes, now in recent few years, uh, we now have a very what can I say? We have a strong focus now for Studio Infinity, and this focus is now being more user centric. It is also being more Indian in our ethos, our direction of thinking. We of course we want to be global, but then we still want to be rooted into our context where we are designing. So principally, I think we are now balancing on these two things. One is the end user, and second is the whole Indianness of our practice. So I think cut it short, it is just these two things right now.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we always say this that we have two kids, and first is Studio Infinity, and second is Simi. So, I mean, that is how our journey with Studio Infinity has, always been. We have seen ourselves grow every day, like each and every day. We've tried that it should be better than before. We should not, try and repeat our mistakes, or at least have a learning from every project to project. And of course, the Indian ethos that he mentioned, for sure, like all the projects, let it be school, let it be residence or any office, we always try to be true to the context and just not create spaces for the sake of trend, like always have the design language which would speak about our country and about our roots. So that is one thing which we have always tried to stick till date.
So basically, when I completed my college, so I had a disconnect with all my friends and all my faculties. But during lockdown, when I saw some projects of Studio Infinity, I was like, "Sir has taught me in first year, and I am seeing wow that these designs are getting like they are reaching out globally on every architecture website." I was so happy, and again this day now I'm having interview with both of you. It's I'm still very happy for it. So, in my next segment, I'll be knowing about the process you work. So, there are some certain projects I get inspired from, which is the book room, the out of school, the container office, and there are many more I can name. But as an architect, what challenges you face while working on these projects?
See, every project comes with its own set of challenges, and every time you get a new project on the drawing board, uh, first thing that you come across is challenges. And these challenges, they vary from say budget to site to space to material application to what the client aspires for these days. Because earlier, I think when we started our practice in the early 2000s, the it was different. The clients were not that educated, I would say, in terms of design. Now the exposure, the kind of travel that everybody goes through, they also come with a set of aspirations for themselves. So for us, all these challenges are constantly revolving around the project, and it's almost like walking a tightrope, and you have to balance out everything, and even then just maintain the entire essence of what we want to do as a practice. So for us, keeping that essence of Studio Infinity alive in all that we do, irrespective of all these challenges, is something that is more challenging than these set of constraints. So challenge wise, I think that is one aspect that we want to focus upon. Of course, when a project comes, it has to be tackled in a very different way. So you cannot look at a residence the way you probably would look at an office, or the probably the way you would look at a school. So that ways you have to balance out things, and this is where we are. So taking each project as it comes, the only thing is that we want to do justice to what we are working on, and that remains the constant, right?
And I think process wise, we believe in doing really good drawings and making good details and doing all of it on the drawings. Like both of us do not have this kind of practice that we would go on this side and sketch out a few things and give it to the carpenters or to the contractors ahead. So there is a lot of brainstorming that happens in the studio with our colleagues. And then we also do a lot of hands-on thing or any kind of experiment that is happening in any of the project. So those models are being made in the office, or we would like to try each and everything like 1:1 scale, do it ourselves. Or even if it's a school, we would actually gather kids from the society. We would ask them to do it, or just work play around the whole thing to see how comfortable it is, and then it actually goes onto the site. So I think the backstage work that happens in the studio is the most crucial part for all these projects that you've named, because certainly all of them have come with their own constraints and with their own um, challenges that has come up with.
In fact, the way she mentioned, we don't have this fancy architect kind of a thing where we go on site and we just sketch out things and we say, "Kya ab isko bana do." For us, it doesn't work. Unfortunately, it's not the glamour question that we have. But a lot of effort goes into drawings, and we really believe in making good drawings. And for every project, there are piles of drawings that are there. So every revision, even the smallest change, has to be made on the drawings, and then it goes on the site. And like she said, that the back end work which never comes across in a project. So what we ultimately you see is just probably 10 images of a project, which always make it look good. But the back end work that happens is humongous. I'll tell you a small example. So there's a project known as the outdoor classroom. So it was a pre-primary school that we designed. So then our daughter was in that age of 4.5 years when we were designing this school, and the end user, the students, were of the same age group. So then we started looking at our daughter as a client. So every time she used to behave in a particular way, we used to feel, okay, school, the kids are going to behave like this, and we have to design the space accordingly. So she became a guinea pig, but that is how the thought process is, and
Yes.
that is how the thing happens throughout the course of a project. So it is always hands-on.
So for basically for certain type of projects, you have to get into the client's shoes. So for schools has been a large part of our practice. So they have always been challenging. So that is how we were seeing our daughter as a client, and every time noticing her more keenly. Okay, see, these things kids appreciate, these things they like. And then in fact, just to study her scale and probably the wash basin heights and small things, the furniture detailing, we used to take her to the site and understand the scale and proportions. Okay, yeah, for kids it has to be this is right. Otherwise for residents, I think it's basically all of us are just into that everyday routine and practice. Residences have a standard set of whatever scale, proportions and detailing that happens in those kind of projects. But schools and libraries that we did have really been challenging for us. So but of course a great learning experience that we've had.
But I must say that the outdoors classroom, it would have been very close to your heart. It has been very exciting journey for you when you saw your kid and observe all these things while designing. It must have been very exciting.
It certainly is. In fact, every project, when you see the way it is being used by the end users, there is no other joy that can replace it. Because see, ultimately, we as architects, most of the times we fail to understand that when we are designing spaces, we are designing them for somebody. We are not designing them to be only museum like atmospheres. So they have to be occupied. People have to live in them. And once the user starts using those spaces to the fullest, then actually that joy is there for us when you see people using it the way you had imagined it to be. And
Yes.
it's not our whims and fancies as architects and designers which are attached to a project. It is about those realistic things. See, for instance, the project Devnanda. Uh, so the family over there had always stayed into a ground floor house, and now they were going to shift into a upper floor apartment kind of a thing, but in a single multi utility building. So over there, we introduced a small courtyard and a swing next to it. So during the daylight, when the grandfather in the house sits on that jhula and plays with the grandchildren, I think that joy and seeing that happen every day is something that is more gives us more happiness and it just keeps us going. So this is the kind of um, challenge that we are looking at to make our spaces more user centric, and that is how it is.
So, Sagar, in fact, when we try and document our projects, no, we do not like to capture dead spaces. We always try and document it with the family members or with the users. Even the outdoor classroom, you'll see kids playing around, or we just left the kids into that space. So there was this, Tipri Pani game in outdoor classroom where kids were supposed to jump from one to two, three, and further so on. But what they did was they pulled a chalk and they started drawing on those black tiles. So even such joys, in fact, this was
Not
amazing.
planned.
It was not planned. We always thought, okay, they will sit around and they'll jump, because we keep dreaming. No, architects are, big time dreamers. I think whenever we design, we only dream that, okay, this space would be used in such a way. But seeing such other explorations that has been done by the user was fantastic. So we always try and capture the stories of the spaces that we have created, and I think that completes the project as a whole. So
So I
yeah,
think
that's about.
architect does not only create a space, architect also creates an experience.
Totally.
True, agree on that.
So can you share something about some insights about your ongoing projects?
Currently, we are fortunate enough to have a variety of projects in our kitty. So schools, of course, is a major part of our portfolio. That is certainly happening at multiple levels, various schools, and that keeps us on our toes also. Then, of course, there are houses. There is one very interesting house that is coming up near Barshi. So filler slab and ferro cement and exposed brickwork, all of that. So we are experimenting with materiality over there. So for us, like every project comes up with a different challenge, and over there the challenge is about using the materials in its true sense. So a lot of experimentation is happening there. Then we are trying to do a small homestay kind of a space near Karzat in containers. So first we did the container office, which was a big learning experience. First time we probably thought of welding and metal joinery in our projects. So this is now taking it one step ahead. Then we are working in the public realm. So we are doing these bus terminuses for MSRTC across Maharashtra. So right now we are involved with seven different sites. So that is again challenging because designing public spaces itself is a big challenge. All are and then working with the government. So it's again a different kind of a balance that we have to achieve, and we are trying to find out our way negotiating through those odds that come across. But so this is the kind of variety that we are working on, and of course, it just more and more we get to work on these different kind of projects, the more our involvement with work is happening. So that is it.
So any project on the eastern side of Maharashtra, like where Nagpur, where I live basically.
No, not yet. Not yet.
So I was like, when you're telling me, you told about filler slab and working with containers. How was your experience working with some different materials like this?
uh, I would rather say these are not different materials, these are our materials, and I think we should be the most comfortable ones to use these kind of materials. So the filler slab project that he mentioned is coming up in Barshi, and we are doing it for a family who is more into farming. So this project is literally coming up in their farms. So it should be rooted, grounded, true to the context, and the most important thing is that the family should be super comfortable in that project, in that space. It should not be uh, as if we've designed a luxurious hotel or a resort kind of thing, and taking the family there. So we do not want to really disturb their everyday lifestyle. We certainly want to give them a better lifestyle, but keeping the essence true to its nature. So that is what we are trying to do there, and of course source all the material that would be locally available and easy for the client also, to bring up the project comfortably.
And if you see our all our projects, our material palette is very minimal. So it's not about using every material that you come across. the architecture and interior design industry is now flooded with materials every day. So every day, I think there is one new material that is launched. But there are a few materials which will always be close to any architect. So it's not only us or anybody else. Every architect or designer will have his own comfortable material palette. So if you'll ask them what खुद का घर बनाना है और क्या use करोगे, so they would just specify a few materials and that they really like. So for us, whether it is our house, our office, or anybody else's work, there is a material palette that we are comfortable working with. Of course, we want to explore new materials every time we are assigned a different job. It doesn't mean that we are partial towards a particular material or not. But yes, when you use a material, you have to understand it. And it's all about science, I think. How a material behaves in what kind of conditions, indoors, outdoors, summers, winters, monsoons, whether it is meant for to walk barefoot or with shoes, all those things come into place. And it's a challenge. And the only way you can work around this challenge is be very rational about thinking about materials. Common sense. I think it just boils down to that at the end of the day. You don't want to use, see, probably if there's a glossy material, you will not use it in the bathroom. It's basic common sense. So that applies to using materials everywhere. And that is how it is.
To this, I will just add on. Once we heard architect Sanjay Patil from Nasik, and where he mentioned that, when you go out for parties or any kind of events, we are always dressed well. And the minute you come home, or you want to just get into your pajamas and kurtas, and that's the most comfortable thing for any human. So I think our spaces have to be that ways that they should be absolute comfortable. They should calm down your brain, because there is so much of chaos happening outside. Every person is running around. So the minute you step into your house, you should absolutely be, toned down, or take a break, take a pause. That kind of atmosphere one should create. So I think we really connect with those kind of thoughts. And once one of our client also mentioned, that I don't want spaces where before using it I have to think twice. Okay, should I sit like this? The kid is playing around. Oh my god, now the kid is going to break this. Yahan mat छुओ, ये इस पे हाथ मत लगाओ, ऐसे बैठो. So you don't have to think before using your own space. So we believe in creating I think these kind of
Yeah.
spaces for the client.
I think you gave us a very, very simple example of like coming back to home and being what is your comfort zone by wearing pajamas and all. That was the best example and most simple example you gave to us. So coming back to my last segment, which is advice to aspirants, what all things an architect should keep in mind while planning for a project or brainstorming?
Uh, Actually, this is a very tough question because eventually every person finds out his or her own way of looking at a project. The only thing that I can tell you is, and tell every other person who is watching this interview or who would probably be aspiring to be into design, is there is no end to hard work. You have to be persistent with the kind of effort that you put in doing every single thing, whether it is drawings, whether it is visiting the sites, talking with the workmen at the site. They will give you a lot of insights, or understanding your clients, or understanding the context where you are building. All of this persistently, year after year, day after day, you have to put in efforts to do it. Nothing is going to come easily. It's like you just cannot acquire knowledge without reading. It's as simple as that. So without putting efforts, you're not going to get fruits out of it. So the only advice that we always like to give is that hard work is always going to pay off, and working hard is what you shouldn't be avoiding. There are no shortcuts.
That's true. That's true. And I would like to ask you one more question that how to deal with a material which is not explored on a larger scale.
I think at some point in time you will have to start talking to the material because it is because when it is not, so, see, somebody has to make mistakes. How the world evolves is, I make a mistake, then she would probably say, okay, I'm not going to make this mistake. I would do some other mistake, but I'll move on from here. So what happens with materials that are less explored is that somebody has to make mistakes and then tell the world that okay, this is not to be done with it, or this can be done with it. And this is how you go on in that journey of searching and exploring a different material. So the only way is try and probably think about how that material can be used in so many different ways. And I think slowly the material starts telling you, okay, this is where I'm good at. Say, for
Hmm.
instance, brick, a very simple material like brick. It is widely used, especially in the Indian context. Brick is everywhere, locally available. But at some places, the brick would say, okay, this is not where I'm meant for. Ultimately, you cannot use a brick where probably stone or concrete has to be used. So that is how every material is going to tell you, okay, this is not my place. But for that, you have to probably the dialogue starts by thinking about it, exploring more, and learning more. Luckily, with the internet around us, there is data that is bombarded. So there's so much data at your disposal. So R&D is definitely going to help.
No, and for material exploration, I also feel that just for the sake of using it, do not use it unless and until you feel that really there is a need of using that material. I think as designers and architects, we should be really conscious about what kind of material is being used in a project. I just feel that the way design has layers, our project and every wall and every furniture piece that we carve also has layers, material ke upar material, material ke upar material. So stop doing that. Somehow, I sometimes feel very I mean, I really feel for it that we should absolutely use bare minimum projects and just not have layers and layers and layers of materials. So that's my take on materials.
I think these advices will help many architects, including me, because the things you told about materials happens to us all young architects. We like go there and we want to explore everything we want. So we want to give it best. But I think these small advices will work for us a lot. And there are many takeaway points from this particular interview. Like there is no shortcut. Hard work is necessary. So I would like to thank you and sir and ma'am for taking out time and speaking to us. And particularly, sir, when I started with that bitter memory, but it was a memory for me that everything changed for me. I was very rigid at start that okay, this is my design and this is the best. And that day when you that was a experience when you gave me a redo. I was like, why he has given me that redo? But slowly, when I evolved as a designer, I now understand it that if you have not given me at that time, things would have been very different for me. So I started with that note, but I want to end it with a very positive note that thank you for giving me that redo.
Good you said this.
No, I
Yes,
mean, Sagar, in fact, I am appreciating you, to accept this and absolutely be positive about it. So, I mean,
yeah,
that's
because
I
that's a big
was
thing.
I was
because
very furious that day because I was the single student who got the redo on the first project, on the first architecture project of their life. I was very furious. I went back to my hostel and I was so angry. But then I worked on that project. I got good marks and I was happy. But I'm slowly realizing it now that how architects do think and what a small advice can work for you. So that worked for me a lot because that stubbornness and that rigid thinking has to be changed someday.
Amazing.
that's a good realization, Sagar.
Yeah, I mean, and I think sometimes we should take this redo thing very positively. Even when we're practicing,
Yeah.
literally clients give us a redo. So
Yes.
they say, yeah, okay, we want one more option. We don't like this, so that's a redo for us. So sometimes we just have to positively accept that yeah, something better might come out from this.
Yes.
So just take it.
Yeah, and we've learned the very hard way. And so whatever experience we have, we would like to share with everyone, every person that we meet. See, our seniors in the industry have been very kind to us. in teaching every single aspect, whether it was documentation or about projects or about materials. They've never shied away from that. And that is how we want to do it. So we, again, when we pass on this, what we've learned from our seniors, we want to give our fullest to it. And whatever we've learned, we want to add to it. So that way, every time we give a review or every time we say something about somebody else's work or efforts, it is always to make it better. It's not with the thing to point somebody down or say something negative about it. But it's always that realization has to come that okay, now this is one way of looking at it, but there are so many other ways of looking at it. And the day we start understanding that multiple thought processes can influence one idea, I think that is where the design journey starts.
Thank you for tuning in for this podcast. I hope you enjoyed our talk. You can also follow us on our other social media platforms such as Instagram and YouTube. We post content daily there. The link is added in the description.